Welcome to your Introduction to Kindergarten Knowledge Domain 2, the 5 senses. We know this is likely your first time teaching this unit, so this learning module is designed to help you become more familiar with key content in the 5 senses unit. Our goal is to ensure you are well prepared to plan and ultimately teach your students. By the end of this module, you'll be able to describe why this unit is important and how it connects to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Recognize how the unit fits into the overall sequence of learning for students, and determine what students will need to know and be able to do by the end of the unit. At the conclusion of the module, we'll also give you a chance to reflect on how what you have learned will influence your planning moving forward. During this module, you'll want to have the participant notebook available so you can record your thoughts and responses. You can find the participant notebook in the same place you accessed this recording via Schoology. We recommend that you print the document so you can jot down notes during the learning module. You'll also want to be able to reference your teacher guide and the student activity book for Unit 2. The images in this recording are meant to be supportive of your experience, but of course you can reference your print materials at any time if that's easier or more helpful to you. To that end, I'll be calling out page numbers throughout the module. Feel free to pause the video now so that you can make sure you have your materials. Let's begin by grounding ourselves in the importance of what students will learn in this unit. In this unit, or domain, kindergarten students will build their language skills through speaking and listening, observation, and activities. Students will learn both through read-alouds and explorations how humans gather information through our 5 senses. This domain will establish a foundation of knowledge and vocabulary students will build on when they further study the human body in future grades. In the last lessons of this unit, students will also hear inspirational stories about the lives of 2 individuals, Ray Charles and Helen Keller, who overcame significant challenges posed by the loss of sight and hearing. In the first 6 lessons of this domain, students are introduced to all 5 senses and the body part responsible for that sense. They'll explore each sense in more depth through interactive activities and read aloud. After a pausing point where they review what they've been learning, students are introduced to Ray Charles and Helen Keller in the last 2 lessons of the domain, and the stories of how these 2 inspiring individuals overcame major sensory challenges. Now let's turn to how this unit connects to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our DEI and social justice guides available on Schoology in the Resources tab will help you explore how the 5 senses unit brings diversity, equity, and inclusion to life for students. In the guide, you'll see a summary of how diversity, equity, and inclusion is addressed as students learn about the 5 senses, how the 5 senses help us experience the world, and what happens if the senses of sight and hearing do not function properly. Questions are provided to get students thinking about how our senses and their potential loss can affect us physically and culturally as we live our lives on our own and as a part of a group. Also, modifications to specific lessons are offered to help ensure a wide variety of different people and experiences are represented. Now it's your turn. In your own words, describe why this unit is important and how it connects to diversity. Feel free to record your thoughts in your participant notebook or discuss with colleagues. Pause this recording now so that you can do so. Now let's orient to some specifics within the unit. This unit contains 8 daily lessons. Each entire lesson will require a total of 60 minutes, but can be split into 2 parts and delivered at different times of the day. The unit also includes 4 additional days, 1 pausing point day following lesson 6, and at the end of the unit, there's a review day, a unit assessment day, and a day for culminating activities. We anticipate you'll spend approximately 12 days total on this domain. As shown in this lesson at a glance table from the teacher guide, each lesson in this domain is composed of the same distinct parts: introducing the read aloud itself, and the application activity. The lesson may be divided into smaller chunks of time and presented at different intervals during the day if you so choose. Each entire lesson requires a total of 60 minutes. The read aloud text is found in the teacher guide. We encourage you to read the text as written and to avoid paraphrasing, even if the readings are challenging for your students to grasp. One of the purposes of the read aloud is to expose students to text that may be beyond their reading comprehension, but still within their listening comprehension. The teacher guide will cue you as to when to point out visual supports, clarify vocabulary, and ask questions that will help the students comprehend the read alouds. In this unit, teachers will engage students in daily read alouds using text found in the teacher guide. You'll scaffold student understanding of the read aloud text using images from a digital flip book and image cards that can be displayed in your classroom, such as this diagram of the parts of the eye. You'll have hard copy of these resources, and they can also be found on the teacher resource site. Also on the teacher resource site, teachers can access digital components and a caregiver letter that introduces this unit. The teacher guide will reference the digital resources and where in lessons you might use them. The teacher resource site also contains other useful items such as a knowledge builder video and the Rainbow Joe and Me trade book and guide to help build student understanding of blindness. Teachers in LAUSD will receive this trade book along with your other hard copy materials. Pages in the corresponding student activity book will also help students to process and express what they're learning while providing you with a chance to check on their understanding. The student activity book also contains additional take-home letters to help keep caregivers involved in what students are learning at school. The list from page 3, shown here, page 3 of the teacher guide, lists all of the core vocabulary words in the 5 senses unit. Bold-faced words are featured in the word work portion of each lesson after the read aloud. You may remember from your initial training that word work is a fast 5-minute deep dive into the meaning of a word to allow students to better initialize it. Students are not immediately expected to use all the vocabulary words on their own. However, through repeated exposure throughout lessons, they should acquire a good understanding of most of these words and begin to use some of them in conversation. In this domain, students will focus on using drawing to describe key concepts in informational texts about the 5 senses. They'll create drawings that identify a sense with the corresponding body part. They will, as a class, use a T-chart to categorize odors and also sort foods based on the sense of taste. Students also complete 2 timelines showing important scenes from the lives of Ray Charles and Helen Keller. Now again, it's your turn. Name 2 to 3 key takeaways you want your students to have by the end of this unit. Pause the recording now to jot down your thoughts or discuss with colleagues. Content within CKLA is ordered so that new units build upon the content and vocabulary in previous units, both within and across grade levels. The result is that students develop vast background knowledge of literature, science, social studies, and the arts. Let's take a look at how the 5 senses unit connects to other units within kindergarten as well as in future grades. In CKLA, student knowledge builds systematically over time. For instance, the knowledge and vocabulary learned in the 5 senses unit of kindergarten will prepare students for the human body domain in grade 1, human body building blocks and nutrition domain in grade 2, and the human body systems and senses domain in grade 3. Pause the recording now to jot down your thoughts or discuss this question with colleagues. How does this unit fit into the overall sequence of learning for students? In kindergarten domain 2, students will engage in an end of unit assessment. Let's make some connections to that unit assessment now. The domain assessment evaluates each student's retention of domain-specific and academic vocabulary words and the core content targeted in the 5 senses domain. There are 3 parts to this assessment. The directions for the assessment begin on page 102 of the teacher guide, and the student pages are in the student activity book. Part 1 assesses vocabulary. You'll ask students a question using a word they have heard from the read-alouds. For example, when you ask, "Can my nose smell many different kinds of scents?" Students should circle the thumbs up on the corresponding page from their student activity book to indicate a yes answer. Similarly, in part 2 of the assessment, which evaluates student understanding of domain content, you will read statements about the senses from the teacher guide, page 103, while students follow along on a page in their student activity book. For instance, when you read in row 2, the first object is snow, circle the senses or body parts that you could use to discover more about that object. Students then circle the correct images in their student activity book. In part 3, you read a scenario from the teacher guide, such as this one here about burning popcorn. And students use an activity book page to help them decide which of the senses, represented by a body part, helps keep them safe. The results of the assessment should guide your use of culminating activities at the end of the unit to either remediate or to enrich student learning. The culminating activities begin on page 105 and include activities like this one, where students choose to make one of their senses into a superpower. Throughout the unit, students engage in a variety of learning experiences that will prepare them to successfully complete this assessment. For example, as noted earlier, all of the core vocabulary words appear in read-alouds throughout the unit. Many of the words from the Part 1 domain assessment on vocabulary are found in this list. Bold-faced words like remarkable have an associated word work activity, and it's a good idea to make these part of everyday conversations with students. Additionally, vocabulary words are defined and broken into tiers at the beginning of each lesson to help you teach them. Vocabulary is also noted on take-home letters, where caretakers are asked to use the words with students at home. Assessments Part 2 and 3 will require students to use their knowledge of the content they learned throughout the unit. Images from the read-alouds, comprehension questions, and the application lesson components throughout the unit prepare students to apply what they're learning before they get to that assessment. To be sure students are ready for the final assessment, there's a mid-unit pausing point day after Lesson 6. It includes a variety of review activities as well as a mid-domain assessment. Formative assessments in each lesson, which connect to the lesson's primary focus and grade level standards, provide practice for students and feedback to you about how students are progressing through the unit. You'll see exit passes like this one, where students are asked to verbalize what they've understood from a read aloud. There are also a variety of formative checks for understanding embedded in lessons that prompt students to show what they've learned by participating in a simple activity, such as recalling facts, engaging in a think, pair, share activity, or a turn and talk activity, or following directions in a stand-up, sit-down activity such as this one. And finally, after Lesson 8, there's a domain review day to help ready students for the assessment with instructions starting on page 100 of your teacher guide. This review includes a variety of activities related to the vocabulary and content of the unit. Now, name at least one thing your students will need to know or be able to do in order to be successful on the end of unit assessment. Pause the recording now to jot down your thoughts or discuss with colleagues. We hope this learning module was useful as you prepare to teach Domain 2, the 5 senses. Of course, this is only the beginning. We also strongly recommend that you closely read the text within this unit as a key part of your preparation. If you would like more guidance on getting to know the text deeply before you teach them, check out the Text Talk Protocol in your participant notebook appendix. And if you would like to access our templates for unit or lesson level planning, those are also found as links in the appendix of your participant notebook. What will you prioritize as you continue to plan for this upcoming unit of instruction? Pause the recording one last time to jot down your thoughts or discuss with colleagues. Thank you for engaging in this module today. We hope you were able to accomplish these 3 objectives during our time together. We wish you well in your upcoming instruction with students.